And welcome to this week's episode of the UFO Show, episode 30, if my counting is correct. Busy week, but before we jump in there, Andy, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good. I took your advice yesterday with the Montreal game and bet the over. So things are good, and baseball's back, so we don't have to try to come up with bets on like Korean League baseball and French League second division soccer over the summer. So that's good.
Yeah, that's gonna be huge because, as we know, baseball's back. So we'll start seeing some betting on baseball. Well, why don't we start a little bit with baseball then? Because we do have some future odds here on baseball for this coming season. I know it's a little bit early because we don't know exactly who is going to sign where, but do you have a favorite coming out of the NL, favorite coming out of the AL, or World Series winner, just based off of how the rosters or look now and how kind of players are projected to sign where they are?
Yeah, like you said, it's going to be tough to say, just because there's lots of free agents that haven't moved yet. I mean, if I had to make a prediction right now, New York Yankees seem to be in on everything, including Freddie Freeman. He's probably the best free agent available. So I like the Yankees to come out of the AL. That pays out at plus 520. Interesting note, the Blue Jays are at plus 460 to win the American League. So they're actually ahead of the Yankees. They have the second best odds. I really like the Blue Jays team as it stands now. I think they're going to add some more. So those would be my two bets in the AL. National League, the Dodgers are always there, but at plus 260, I don't really like the value. I think the Mets at plus 480 and the Padres at plus 560 would probably be where I'm leaning to. New York, obviously, I think is basically spent all the money they're going to spend, and maybe they add another pitcher. San Diego, I think they have a little bit of room to improve their team. And of course, with Tatis and their pitching staff, they'll be in the mix too. So those are, 3-4 options I'm kind of looking at right now.
I'm going to go, you know what? This is the year. The Mariners are going to make the playoffs. I can feel it. They've stacked up before the pause, and supposedly they have a couple more signings coming. Mariners at plus 560 to win that AL West. I'll take that. You know what? Like, it's time. The Mariners are going to make the playoffs this year. I feel like the 21-year drought is going to be 22-year drought is going to finally end this year, I feel like.
I like the Mariners bet too, because you look at their division, and I mean, Texas is always a question mark. They spent a lot of money. They may spend some more. Rumors they might get Kershaw. And then Houston, it looks like they're going to lose Carlos Correa. So they won't have a shortstop, which is arguably the most important defensive position. The Mariners were right in it to the end last year. I think they're just going to get better as their young players have another season of experience. So what'd you say, plus 560? That's a really solid bet for the Mariners to win the AL West.
Yeah, the big question in the AL West is, what are the LA Angels going to look like? You have Shohei Ohtani and you have Mike Trout, and you can't do anything with that. Like, how long can these two players miss the playoffs for, basically?
Yeah, well, that's the thing, right? They're kind of like the Oilers of MLB. They have the two best players in the league in the entire MLB, and they're usually out of it by mid-July. So Angels, they're going to be an interesting one. They seem to have like a lot of top heavy salary, obviously with Otani and Trout and Rendon at third. If they can add another quality pitcher or two, we'll see if Syndergaard can bounce back. I mean, potential is always there for the Angels to be dangerous because they do have the two best players, but I don't really see them figuring this out. The AL West, I really like your pick of the Mariners, to be honest. I think that's probably where the smart money's going.
Okay, so let's jump into a little bit of what's going on in the NHL right now. We have quite a few games going on. I'll just jump in. There's a couple live games right now that have some interesting betting lines. First, we're gonna go here with the if you bet the Philadelphia Flyers, they're 15 minutes into the first period. They're down 2-0 to Florida. If the Flyers come back at the moment, the odds are at plus 825. So a $10 bet gets you a total win of 92.50. Now, it's the Philadelphia Flyers versus the Florida Panthers. So odds are Philadelphia is not coming back, but these are the type of bets that you kind of look at and you say maybe it's worth putting down, $5-10 on, because you never know in hockey how things work.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, right? Is in one game, crazy things can happen in hockey, especially in hockey. It's so random. 2-0 though. Like, I mean, Florida's, if not the best team in the league, they're right in the conversation. That game's probably over in my opinion. To me, if I were to make a bet on that game, I'd be looking at Florida minus 3.5, pays out a plus 110. I mean, we all know the Flyers struggles in goal and with their goal scoring, and Florida's one of the higher scoring teams in the league. I could see this being like a 5-1 type game. So maybe I'd go minus 3.5 on that one for Florida.
And then we got a barn burner, of a game in the nation's capital, Ottawa versus Seattle. So right now, Ottawa is up 1-0. But Seattle did score. Goal was taken away due to an offside. And that is, they just locked that, but it's about plus 200 for the Seattle Kraken to come back in that game. That one's a little bit better because Ottawa and Seattle are near the bottom of the league. And that's a game that you could really look at and say Seattle does have an opportunity to come back. I wouldn't, bet too heavily on that, but at 1-0 down, only 17 minutes in, Seattle Kraken could be a good bet as they, have James Schwartz back in the lineup and all of this. So we'll see what happens there.
Yeah, I like that bet a lot better, especially a plus 200. That's good odds, obviously. Oh, it just went up now to plus 220 actually for Seattle. This is probably one of the rare games where Seattle has the edge in goal. Ottawa doesn't really have any good goalies. Seattle's goalies obviously haven't played that great this year, but like you said, it's a one-shot game right now. So anytime you can get plus 225 in a one-shot game, that seems like again, I wouldn't bet like $50 on it, but if you want to put $5 or $10 down, it seems like a good bet.
And the Seattle Kraken are like, I know that they lose, that they only have 17 wins on the year, but they're not as bad as their record is. Like they took the Leafs they lost to the Leafs 5-3. They got 3 goals past Jack Campbell, and the Leafs only allowed 5. Like that's okay. It's not great, but like, this is Ottawa. Like if the Kraken get their opportunities, they can score. Like they're not inept when it comes to scoring all the time.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, they have some good finishers. Eberle, Jaden Schwartz, what's his name? Jared McCann is on pace, I think, to score like 29 goals or something this year. They have some decent finishers. I wouldn't say they're the deepest scoring team in the league, but again, right now it's a one-shot game. So anytime you can get plus 225, like that seems like a good bet in this close of a game.
I also do want to mention that the the Arizona Coyotes are up 2-0 on the Leafs. 21 minutes into the game. Uh, Not going to talk about betting for that game, but just to reiterate, the Arizona Coyotes are up 2-0 on the Leafs in the first period in Toronto. So that's always great to see.
Yes, I think they just started the second period, but yes, Coyotes being up 2-0. Anytime the Leafs are behind, you know it's hard to complain about that. So I hope they lose like what was it? When they played Detroit a couple weeks ago. They had a 10-8 game or 10-7
Yeah,
game, something like that. I'd love to see Campbell give up 10 goals. The meltdown from Leafs Twitter would be all time.
yeah, man. I can't wait to see the headline. Austin Matthews held off the scorer sheet as Toronto falls to Arizona.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
So let's look at some interesting games here that are getting going in the next couple minutes. We got Anaheim, Nashville. Anaheim has really slipped. Nashville isn't doing great either, though. They were 4-6 in their last 10 games, but Anaheim's 4-6 in their last 10 games. These are two teams that are battling for that wild card spot. This game has Anaheim at plus 171 on the road. So Nashville is the favorite at minus 200. Um, I don't know if this is a really good bet to take because I do feel like Nashville is going to take this one at home.
Yeah, I like Nashville here too. This kind of seems like the end of it for the Ducks this season. They've been a good story. I know their GMs on the record saying, we're listening on our pending UFAs like Manson and Lindholm. UC Saros, I think, is having a better year than John Gibson. So, I mean, maybe at plus 171. If you want to kind of play the odds a little bit, maybe Anaheim's an okay bet here, but I think Nashville wins this one.
Well, the big question around uh, Anaheim is, will Ryan Getzlaf be moved, and where will he be moved?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. It seems I think they tried to ask him last year and he, politely declined to move. He seems like one of those guys who, much like the Sedins, would rather retire than go somewhere else. Obviously, what he's done for the Ducks franchise, he's earned that right. But if he does shake loose, that would be a very interesting pickup for a contending team.
It also depends, like last year was a little bit complicated with like he may, you probably didn't want to move your family in the middle of a pandemic and stuff like that, but this could be his last year, so we'll see what happens there.
Yeah, that's a good point, right? Is that, this year it's a lot different than last year. So you're right. Maybe, now that things are sort of quote unquote back to normal a little bit more, maybe he does decide to make one last kick at it and go somewhere.
Yeah. So Rangers at St. Louis. This is the Pavel Buchnevich Cup right here. Rangers are at plus 100. St. Louis at minus 120. I do feel like the Rangers, just looking at this standings situation here, I like the Rangers in this one. They both come in. The Rangers have done a little bit better. They have one more win in their last 10 than St. Louis. The Rangers have 77 points compared to St. Louis's 71. And I just feel like even though the Rangers are on the road here, like this has the feeling of a Rangers win.
Yeah, I like the Rangers here too. Speaking of Buchnevich, he's at plus 200 to score one goal or plus 1100 to score two or more. So I think Buchnevich is going to get a goal tonight. So I'd like Buchnevich at plus 200 to score against his former team.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll jump over to the battle of the 2004 Stanley Cup final. I believe it was the Tampa Bay Lightning versus the Calgary Flames. Now, this one doesn't actually have a favorite. It's Calgary at minus 113, Tampa at minus 105. And there are some people who are saying that this may be the Stanley Cup final, that we might get a rematch of the 2004 Stanley Cup final. And this is just a preview. So do you think Calgary has what it takes to take down Tampa Bay?
Yeah, I do like Calgary in this game. Obviously, like you said, Tampa Bay is two-time defending Cup champions. This game's essentially a pick 'em. I mean, either way, you're not getting super great value. So in that case, I kind of default to the home team. Flames are in the midst of trying to pull away from Vegas and in Edmonton and everybody else chasing them in the Pacific and really lock down their playoff spot. So I like Calgary here. I think Markstrom's having a really, really solid season for them. I think Calgary probably wins a close one, like 3-2 or 2-1.
Yeah, I know that a lot of people, 2004 was almost 20 years ago. Oh, yeah, almost 20 years ago. But there is still a little bit of like hatred in Calgary for the Tampa Bay Lightning. I know just looking at Flames Twitter, people are like, I can't watch this game because it just brings back bad memories. I don't think there's anybody left on the rosters from the series. I think the only player left, like, there's only like two players left in the entire league, and that would be probably Chara and Joe Thornton, who would have played in that series. But like, there's still we talk in Vancouver about when Boston comes to town. So when you instill that kind of rivalry, what Jerome McGinley and Vincent Lecavalier dropping the gloves during that series all those years ago, like there is still a little bit of heatedness in the city.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's one of the better Stanley Cup finals over the last 20, 25 years. I think the only player left in that game from 2004 in these organizations would probably be Craig Conroy, who I believe is still a front office executive with the Flames. Yeah, I mean, Flames fans don't like the Lightning simply for the fact that they feel they got robbed of a Stanley Cup in Game 6 at home. I mean, there is some photos and videos, the angles, whatever you want to say about the angles, but it does look like Jelena put that puck in Game 6. So crowd should be interested in this one. Should be a big game. Like you mentioned earlier, it's probably, best team in the Pacific Division for sure, one of the best teams in the West versus one of the best teams in the East. So at the very least, it'll be, two teams that are playing well going into this game.
And the concept of teams, in the Stanley Cup final being robbed is not like that happens basically every year. It seems like, there's always one game where the referees just decide that they're not going to call any penalties or something happens in the game that is very questionable. So I think every Stanley Cup final you can look back on and say, okay, this was a little bit this may have shifted the momentum one way or the other.
Yeah, who knows, right? And I mean, in terms of games being stolen, I think the 2011 series in total was stolen from Vancouver. So not sure if Flames or Lightning fans can complain about anything when Vancouver, basically had an entire series stolen from them.
Well, arguably, Tampa Bay should have been in that 2011 Stanley Cup final if not for the referees calling zero penalties in Game 7 of the Tampa Bay Boston series and shutting down one of the league's best power plays in Tampa Bay. While the head of the NHL, one of the guys as the head of the NHL's son was playing in that series conveniently.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, no, I forgot about that, but that's a
I
good
heard
recall by you.
I heard Thomas Dress and Jamie Dodd talking about that the other day on Sportsnet 650, talking about that series and how can you go and make Game 7 with Tampa Bay and Boston have zero penalties the entire game.
Yeah, exactly. Well, especially we saw the way Boston played in the finals. They're they were a hard team to play against, but I wouldn't say they were exactly the most clean team either. So it's very tough to
when
believe
one
there
player
wasn't
runs another player into the boards and breaks his back, and there's no penalty or supplemental, if there's no supplemental discipline on there, who, yeah, that should tell everything. Like what, Dennis Seidenberg almost murdering Mason Raymond, but luckily Aaron Rome gets the longest suspension in Stanley Cup final history, basically.
Well, I think it was the longest, and it still hasn't been beat, which is crazy because we're 11 years later now, I think.
Yeah. Anyway, let's I guess move on. LA is at minus 209. San Jose is at plus 170. Just take LA. Like San Jose is just been beaten down at this point. So we'll see what like that game I don't think is going to be very close.
No, not close at all. And LA at -1.5 pays out at plus 128. So that's probably your better bet than just taking the money line is to take the minus a goal and a half at plus 128.
So we've done we've gone through the NHL gauntlet here, but I do want to ask you one question, going back to baseball here. We do have some, uh, you know, MLB free agents. So I want to just go over some of the names with you, and then you kind of tell us where you think each player is going to go. There's no betting on this, but let's go through the list and see where you think some of these players are going to go. Since you know baseball, I guess better than most people.
Sure, let's do it.
Okay, so Carlos Correa, where do you think he ends up?
Yeah, so speaking of 650, I was listening to a friend of the show, Bick Nazar, today, and he had on Adnan Virk, who's from MLB and NHL Network, and he said that he's hearing the Tigers are really making a strong push for Correa, which kind of surprised me because they just gave Javi Baez 150 million to play shortstop. But Adnan's one of the most dialed in people in the business, so if he's saying the Tigers are all over Correa, I'd lean to the Tigers.
So we'll go with Canadian Freddie Freeman, first baseman.
Yeah, partial Canadian by like marriage and like relation of his ex step aunt or something. But you know what? I think it comes down to two teams. I think he either stays in Atlanta or he goes to the Yankees. The Yankees have the ability, obviously, to massively overpay, in my opinion. So if I were to bet, I'd say he goes to the Yankees.
Chris Bryant, third. Your former, one of your former favorite players in the Chicago Cubs organization.
Yeah, his picture's up in my office here, actually. Chris Bryant's an interesting one because he's shown the ability over the last year and a half to play the outfield, and you can make the argument he's maybe a better outfielder than he is third baseman. But having that ability to play all three outfield positions as well as the corner infield gives teams a lot of flexibility. And now with the universal DH coming in, I don't think NL teams will be as scared of him. I really liked his fit in San Francisco, and I think it's Jeff Passan's reporting that the Mariners are making a strong push for Chris Bryant as well. So, both those teams make sense. I think the Mariners are a little bit more ready to compete than the San Francisco Giants are at this point in time. So I guess I'd say Seattle makes a big splash and snags Chris Bryant.
Yeah, because no Kyle Seager this year for the Mariners anymore.
Exactly. They have a huge hole at third, right? So it makes sense.
You kind of knew when the team president basically shit all over him last year before getting fired that he wasn't returning to Seattle. So
yes. I'm not sure why he chose a rowing club convention to do that, but it is what it is.
So friend of the show, Gord Randall's Trevor Story.
Yeah, Trevor Story's an interesting one. I could see Houston circling around on Story when they lose Correa. Again, Story's a guy who, as he ages, may not be able to play the shortstop position as well anymore. But with that universal DH, I could see Houston, I could see Texas, and I could see even a team, somebody like the Miami Marlins who apparently have some money to spend and could use a Trevor Story type. I guess if I had to pick, I'd say Houston. I think Houston still wants to compete, so if they can get Story, it's not quite as good as Correa in my opinion, but at least they're not plugging in somebody nobody's ever heard of.
Okay, Kyle Schwarber.
Yeah, Schwarber's an interesting one because he has played the outfield his career. He's not necessarily the best fielder He did have a good year last year. However, with the Nationals and the Red Sox, his bat is still a weapon, and he's one of these guys who really benefits from the universal DH. I actually like Schwarber to come back to the Cubs. Obviously, the fit's there. They won a championship together. The Cubs still have some questions in their outfield. They don't really have a go-to DH right now. Obviously, they haven't needed one until this year. I think the familiarity and the flexibility makes a lot of sense for him to come back to Chicago.
Okay, a couple more here. Nelson Cruz, he does play first, but at this point he's a DH. That's really all you're going to use him for.
Yeah, that's all you can really use him for. Cruz is one of those guys who's going to put up massive power numbers, but you're probably only going to be able to play him 100 games a year. There's a few teams I like for Nelson Cruz. I think if Freeman goes to the Yankees, I like the Braves to try to replace that DH spot. I think the New York Mets could be interesting to get Cruz, and I like the Chicago White Sox as well. So those would be kind of my three places. I guess if I had to pick one, I'd say Atlanta.
And the big name on the board, we got Mr. Clayton Kershaw.
Excuse me, yeah. I think Clayton Kershaw is going to end up staying in LA with the Dodgers. He's been there his whole career. He's getting talked about with the likes of Sandy Koufax and some of the all-time MLB and Dodger greats. Only other team I could really see potentially being interested and Kershaw being interested in is the Texas Rangers. Rangers aren't really ready to win right now, but I mean, if they write a big enough check, I think they can get anybody. So I'd say he stays in LA with the Dodgers, but I wouldn't be surprised to see him go to the Rangers either.
Okay, well, MLB, I believe that free agency is they've already signed the deal, or that they're very close to signing the deal. And as soon as it signs, players are available. So I'm sure that we're going to see, within the first 10 minutes, some of these player deals get signed. I'm sure that they were already agreed upon. They were just missing the signature or announcement, and we'll start to see these deals roll in as early as today.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting because, the work stoppage came kind of partway through free agency. So there's a few deals that were right down to the last minute and didn't quite get done before the lockout, which I would assume would be signed, like you said, 5 seconds after free agency officially opens. It does sound like both parties have signed off on the new CBA. They're just waiting for lawyer signatures and all the formalities. So it sounds like in the next 2.5 hours, we should see some signings coming through. So will be an interesting night for sure. And like you said, Adam, it'll be interesting to see if we get 50, 60, 70 signings tonight, right as things open up.
Okay, well, that will do it for this week's episode of the UFO. Make sure to head over to area51sportsnetwork.com/betting. There you can get whatever you put into the site, bet99.com, up to $600 you get back as a bet back bonus. So, Andy, thank you once again for joining this week, and we'll talk to you guys again next week.